the standard USB-C port on the bottom of the phone, which is actually shifted to the left for the weird shape of the motherboard. And you've got another USB-C port on the left side of the phone. And this is made for a number of reasons. One, if you're playing a game in landscape mode, it's a lot more comfortable to have the USB-C cable plugged into the side of the device so that it doesn't get in the way of your hands. And two, it was made to attach this brand new cooler called the AeroActive Cooler 3. Now this is a literal fan that you strap to the back of your phone to cool it, because it does get pretty toasty in everyday use, but especially while gaming. Now this AeroActive cooler has more uses than just cooling the phone. That is obviously very useful. It's got a headphone jack in the bottom, so you can listen to music or listen to your game while you're playing it. Unfortunately, they removed it from the body of the phone, so they put it in here instead. You've got another USB-C port, so again, you can play in landscape mode without it being uncomfortable. And this year, they've added a kickstand to it, so if you have a separate controller, you can set your phone up and it can be cooled while you're playing a game. Now that aerodynamic vapor chamber on the side of the phone is definitely where most of the heat builds up, but there is a little vent above it to actually spew heat out of the phone. But still, the phone gets pretty toasty. Now the fan is especially useful when you're using a mode called X mode. And that is basically a profile on the phone that will keep sustained performance on the phone for as long as you have the mode on. Now normally, the X mode software also lets you tweak things like the clock speed of individual cores on the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 Plus, which is just an insane 144 Hz display. And I can't say that I can notice a huge difference between 120 Hz and 144 Hz, but either way, it's pretty insane that phones can actually support that frame rate. Now so far, there aren't a ton of games that support full 144 Hz frame rates. Games like Dead Cells do, and ASUS says that they're adding a lot more over time. But since last year, there have been a ton of games that have moved up to support 120 Hz of refresh rate. So that's pretty good anyway. Now, X mode isn't the only thing that makes this a gaming phone. Last year, ASUS added these capacitive air triggers on the side of the phone, which can basically be used as buttons in games like shooters. So there are two air triggers on the side of the phone, but ASUS has set different zones for them. So now you've actually got 4 different zones that you can click. They've also added swiping and slide. Now you set these air triggers in a software called Game Genie, which comes stock on the phone, and it's pretty well designed, honestly. You can record gameplay with it, you can add crosshairs, and you can set the action points in which you want to have the air triggers set on top of. So effectively, you just put the air triggers over UI elements in the game, and you can set different profiles. Now in the ROG Phone 3, they've got 4 different profiles embedded in the phone. There's 3 different gamery profiles, but then there's the classic profile, which makes it look like a regular, very close to stock smartphone. So for people that don't want those really gamery UI elements, you can switch it to be a lot more simple. And that choice carries over to an experience that's matched by the specs. You've got up to 16 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. You've got up to 512 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. I mean, this phone just flies. I definitely didn't have any UI or stuttering issues, and when running Speed Test G, this phone performed better than pretty much any other phone we've tested. It's super fast. Now, on the last couple ROG phones, the 6,000 milliamp hour battery made this phone stay alive forever. I mean, that's a huge cell, so it lasts a couple of days. And in some circumstances, that was the case on this phone as well. The max amount of battery life I got was over 9 hours of screen on time, closer to 10 hours of screen on time. And finally, we get to the camera system. And I know, a gaming phone probably doesn't have the camera system as its main priority. But man, I was really surprised at how good these cameras are. The main sensor is a 64 megapixel Sony IMX686. And overall, it had really good dynamic range, super good color, and really good sharpness. Now, it wasn't the best in low light, but overall, I mean, it's really good. Like, I preferred this camera system to the Samsung Galaxy S20, which is saying something. You've also got a 13 megapixel wide angle sensor, which has a pretty similar color profile to the main sensor, and it's got a lot of dynamic range too. I mean, you can literally point this at the sun and still get sky detail. It's pretty insane, but it would randomly get some weird splotchiness, which was kind of random. It wasn't that common, but it is important to note. And then on the back, you've got a 5 megapixel macro camera. And now, what are the negatives? Because there's gotta be negatives, right? Well, the ROG Phone 3 doesn't have IP68 water and dust resistance because of the vent on the back. It doesn't have a built-in headphone jack.